Conversations for change. Because the world is ready. It's spring. Historically, spring has always been a very busy time of year for me because I have gardens. We have bees. I plant a lot of flowers. And while we're doing a lot of planting and seeding, we are also packing trees to ship. In the now not quite a decade since we started our little nursery, spring has gotten piled up with busyness. And April seems to be the nexus. In April, the trees that need shipping are calling from their beds, waking up from winter, saying, "Ship us soon or we'll be too awake. We don't want to be awake when we ship. We want to arrive asleep and discover our new home when we wake up, not on the way." And so, shipping starts to take priority. But as the days get warmer, seeding the beds also becomes a priority, because if the seeds aren't in the ground while the weather is still cool and the earth is still cool, the new trees won't germinate. And in the greenhouse, where all the flowers are germinating and growing and being propagated, that warm season that only exists in the cover of the greenhouse gives us time to have plants ready to go into bloom as we head into May and begin to plant out. Planting, seeding, shipping, packing. And that's just the nursery. The other thing that happens in spring, it seems to me, is that we encounter all the places where we're looking at making change. Spring just naturally seems to talk about change, and this year there's a lot of change. There is so much change in the world. I don't pay any attention to the panic or to the stories about the gloom and doom of what will befall us all. After all, in my nearly 7 decades of listening to those stories, I have yet to see any of them actually turn into anything close to what they are heralded to be. And I never paid that much attention anyway. Being a child raised without television after age 6, for which I am truly grateful, I continued that theme of not being engaged through television for most of my adult life, except for a few brief intervals where televisions moved in and out of my household thanks to the children I was raising. But I don't have a television today, and I haven't had a television consistently in my house for more than a couple of years, over many, many decades. I've never listened to the news. I have no interest in the news because I think of the news as the fearmonger department. It never tells me anything that I won't find out some other way. And most of what it says, I never want to know in the first place. But this spring in particular, there has been a lot of change. And because I have friends who are in parts of the world where that change is a little bit more in your face, shall we say, and extreme, I have been paying a little bit more attention. I've also been paying attention to the changes that I'm making here and to how all of these pieces fit together. One of the big changes I've made here in the last couple of years is introducing large quantities of biochar into our landscape. We found a source locally where we could get totes, which are essentially 3 cubic yards of biochar, which we can then treat with worm tea and minerals and put out into the landscape. They have completely changed the gardens and the nursery. The size of our seedling trees has tripled in 1 year. And what they're doing to the soil and the living organisms in the soil, I can't even begin to explain. You'd need a microscope. We have one, and it's great fun to look and see. But what I can tell you is life is exploding all over our little acreage. And the evidence is everywhere. The other big change that I made last year for the first time was introducing sheep wool under the garden beds and as mulching. Thanks to Chloe, Blooms and Greens, I've been learning a lot about sheep wool. And here in Oregon, people have a lot of sheep wool. It took a while to figure out how to find it or to find sheep farmers or people with sheep who wanted to give it to me. But now that that's beginning to happen more frequently, I can tell you sheep wool is a miracle in the landscape, especially in heavy clay. I put it under the garden beds, under the compost, under the biochar, pretty much under everything except the subsoil that is where we start here to build everything. Because our clay soil is so dense, we can't really dig into it to start a bed. Oh, I've had days when I envy my son in California with his soil of statewide importance that fluffs up on the pitchfork end as you gently till in the top 2 inches to put in your compost for the garden. But now that I'm using biochar, sheep wool, and my own worm casting compost and worm tea, I have to say things are looking very good. So much better, in fact, that when I think back to the 12 or now 14 years that we've been here, it's a miracle to me how much things have changed. And these are the changes that I'm interested in. I'm interested in the changes that bring more life, the changes that bring more insect populations, more butterflies, more hummingbirds, more songbirds, more wildlife, and more beauty. The changes that feed the pollinators and fill the gardens with fragrant blooms all season long, from spring right to fall. Those are my favorites. We have been making worm compost now for all the years that we've been here, but the introduction of biochar really changed how that nutrient-dense compost got out into the soil. By making the worm tea and saturating the biochar with it, and then putting it out into the gardens, into the beds, around the trees, and pretty much everywhere we have plantings, which is pretty much everywhere, we have seen a complete transformation of the soil texture and of the soil life and the plants that grow in it. Our gardens go longer and start earlier. Our rob plants, which is the flowering of all of the brassicas, are just prolific starting in February and March, and we're eating rob straight up through April. It's a difficult choice to take out those plants to be able to put in the new plants for the season when they're still in bloom. And I generally end up leaving those garden spots where they're most prolific to be planted with later crops, summer crops like squash or peppers, or somebody who doesn't need early spring, because once I'm done with the rob, I let the rest of the cabbages and brassicas and broccolis go into pure flower for the bees. And the bees will feed on those beautiful yellow flowers for a month at least. I don't like cutting down anything that's in bloom. And I don't cut down anything in the gardens even to clean up until just before spring arrives. I think this year we started in March. And that is another reason this is such a busy season for us. Because we leave standing all the seed heads, all the flower heads, all the mess of the beautiful gardens all winter. And that's why they're full of songbirds and salamanders and all kinds of little creatures who are busy finding food in those seed heads. Flocks of quail, sparrows, towhees, juncos, chickadees. Masses of tiny birds come flying through and fly up out of the gardens in winter as I walk out to the greenhouse. I always feel bad for disturbing them, but I have to walk back and forth sometimes. I know this is a blessed life. I can feel it in every move I make as I walk around this property. I feel the job of stewardship and I take it seriously. I am looking for how the water is moving on the land, how I can improve soil patches or cottonwood or willow berms, how I can increase the amount of biomass that the property is producing, that the land is giving. My chicory started about 6 years ago as a project simply because I love the blue flowers of chicory. Now grows 6 to 8 feet tall in giant berms across the field and blooms from May till September, sometimes even into late October. And it's always full of bees. One of the things I've learned about bees is that they love the color blue. They love chicory blue, they love borage blue, and they love forget-me-not blue. And happily for me, all of these plants are either perennials or self-seeding annuals who come back with such frequency. The chicory, of course, is a perennial, which is wonderful, and I am very much about perennials. I love perennials for their consistency and their return each year. And the more I can fill the landscape with perennials, the less work there is for me to do each spring, although it will never be that I am not planting in spring. Because some of my favorites are the annuals, the zinnias, the sunflowers, the cleomes, the sweet peas. Although there is a perennial sweet pea I had never seen before I moved to Oregon. It is a wild thing and comes up unexpectedly all over the place. And its brilliant purple flowers are spectacular. I quite adore it, and I'm always excited to see where it's going to pop up next. This year it's in 3 new places in the gardens where it has never been before. And of course, I love the California poppies and the sweet alyssum and cosmos. I think I might have every kind of cosmos there is. I try to mix up different colors every year and save seed from all of them. I now have probably a half dozen patches of calendula growing in various locations, one in the gumi berm under the gumi bushes, which I love to mix up with cosmos that are purple because the bright orange and purple is such a wonderful combination. And then there's wildflowers. I have to plant wildflowers. Can't not have wildflowers. So the wildflower annuals always have to go in the spring. And these are all the seedings that have to take place because I'm just not happy with the gardens not full of blooms all summer. And I know it's me who makes all the work for myself. But it's also me who gets all the reward. It's me who gets to see what happens when I put the sheep wool under the garden beds. It's me who gets to see how the biochar transforms the landscape. And it's me who gets to appreciate and love so much all of the ways that working with the land and with all of the living beings in it creates beauty, food, and abundance in every possible way. And I love that. This morning we were talking about the concept of reciprocity. One of our favorite books is Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass, which I think we read for the first time a dozen or so years ago. We listened to it because she narrates it, which is so beautiful. And we've listened to it, I would say, 2 or 3 times by now. And her whole concept of reciprocity, as she explains it, this way of being from the indigenous cultural point of view, and how it fits into the idea of a gift economy, where everything is built on relationship. Transactions are not the order of the day, but rather taking care of each other and being there for each other and doing the things that show our care for each other are the things that shape our decisions and the way the culture works. And I love this idea. It's really how I think human beings are meant to function, because it's the way we function best. I've shared this book with pretty much every member of my family by now, and we have often had conversations about the importance and the power of the things we do that fill our hearts and take care of the people we love. Making homemade jam, running a small nursery, giving plants to the local establishments who do the work of training people in rural livelihood, giving plants to our friends and even our customers. We quite often find we have extra trees or plants that we think will work well for a customer, and we just give them to them because that's what we want to do. And it's where most of the joy comes from. And of course there's joy when people receive their plants and love them and write to us or call us, or especially when they come and pick them up locally and are excited to see them. And usually they are, because the trees and the plants that we sell are beautiful. But there's also something wonderful about being in the space where the things you are doing are driven entirely by the need to be in relationship to the world in the way that serves you and the world. And I am so looking forward to a world where transactions fall away, where the idea of needing to have a transaction in order to have a relationship finally gets turned right side up, so that transactions fall away and relationships rise. I saw a post from Zachary Fisher not so long ago talking about, in this new world, we will be taking care of each other. It's not about where we get to on our own. It's about who we bring with us. And I couldn't agree more. And I don't say that from the place of needing to compromise who you are or to change your own trajectory, but rather to evolve into the place where what you desire is the highest and best for all the people involved in the world with you. And I think that really is where we all are in our heart of hearts. It's certainly where we all start. If you were to ask a 3-year-old, they would tell you without hesitation that the most important thing is that everybody's happy and everybody's fed, and everybody has a soft, cozy place to sleep at night, there would be no doubt whatsoever. And they would not hesitate to make it clear that they knew they were right about it too, because they are. How we've ended up where we are now seems to me to be a confusion of values and a loss of our way along a path and a trajectory that was attempting to control us through the use of the mind, science, and language, but mostly fear. Because the truth is, we are sovereign beings. We stand in a free world, and the place we stand in that free world is totally determined by our perspective. We've been taught that so many times by those who have been robbed of their freedom, by those who have been incarcerated and imprisoned, and who have said to us that the freedom they discovered was within them, even in those situations. And it's true, because the one thing no one can take from us is our choice and our perspective. And I think as we move into this world where the change that we are seeking is seeking us, and we can feel and see all around us all the systems that don't work, crashing into each other and falling over each other and smashing up into a mess. If we can remember that none of these systems serve us, that every time something is brought to our attention to make us fearful, it's really a cause for celebration. Celebration that the old way is falling away. My husband said to me the other morning, "Oh, there's great concern now because all of the fertilizers and chemicals can't get through the Straits of Hormuz to come out to the world." And I thought, wonderful, terrific, because guess what those are? Those are all synthetic, oil-based derivative products which are killing our planet. And we know it. The carbon cowboys in the United States, all of the organic farmers in India and Africa and South America, and the dozens and dozens and dozens of cooperatives and farmers groups who have explored and proven in the last 25 to 30 years across the world, over and over and over, that not only does organic farming work, organic farming outproduces all other chemically based farming methods. Oh, sure, everybody has a little downturn, a little blip on the radar for a year or two, maybe even 3 sometimes, when they make that transition. But give it time. Give it another few years. And guess what? Suddenly production is through the roof. It surpasses all the other previous markers. And it keeps going up. Why? Because diversity is what brings abundance in nature. And the more diverse the soil microbe population, the more abundant the crops. I remember when I was researching my book, I came across all of these studies, and I was stunned to see how simply injecting compost tea full of microbial life with the seed into the fields not only outcompeted the chemicals, but returned the soil to a new level of life that brought back ancient grasses that hadn't been seen in decades, and plant life that had been waiting The seed banks of this earth are abundantly loaded with life, waiting for us to give them back the diversity in the microbial life forms of the soil that can turn them on. And when I've seen all of this evidence, and I still hear people saying, oh, we need science and genetically modified foods and bioengineering to keep the planet safe, to feed the humans on the planet. All I can say is we never have needed those, and we never will. And honestly, the sooner all of that falls away, the happier I'll be. I know I'm blessed. I know I live in a food shed. I live in a part of the world full of organic farms and people who care about nature and the soil. And I myself care about nature and the soil. And so I know I can grow my own food or get it from my neighbors. And that is a blessing. But that's a blessing I want for the whole world. And that's what reciprocity is. It's making things better than you found them. It's turning things around to the place where when you are done and you move wherever it is that we go in that next great adventure, the world you leave behind is richer, more alive, and more diverse and healthy than the one you started with. And the only way we can get there is when we correct our relationship with relationships. When we make our relationships with life itself, with each other, and with all living things the highest priority. And the other beautiful thing that happens when we do that is that our hearts open and we feel fulfilled. We feel love and joy and peace, and we feel overwhelmed with gratitude for the opportunity to be alive, to be in this life, and to feel what it feels like to have nature greet you every morning. To watch the sun come up and listen to the songbirds. To watch the clouds scud across the sky. To feel the ocean breeze come up and listen to it moving through the trees. To stand barefoot on the earth and feel the deep joy and love for the opportunity to be here.